Have you ever felt falsely accused? Imagine being hunted down by someone who once loved you, someone who now seeks your destruction based on lies. The sting of betrayal mixed with the fear for your own life. This was precisely King David's reality around 1000 BCE, when he found himself fleeing from his own son Absalom, who had orchestrated a calculated coup to seize the throne. But there's something fascinating about this particular psalm that many overlook. While tradition associates Psalm 7 with David's flight from Absalom, the superscription actually mentions it as a Shiggaion of David, which he sang to the Lord concerning Cush, a Benjamite. Who was this mysterious Cush? Some scholars believe he may have been a supporter of Saul, David's predecessor, who spread vicious rumors about David. Others suggest he might have been a code name for Saul himself, or possibly connected to Shimei, who cursed David as he fled Jerusalem during Absalom's rebellion. Why does this matter? Because it reveals something profound about human nature that remains unchanged across 3,000 years, the devastating power of false accusations and the universal human cry for justice when we've been wronged. The word Shiggaion itself presents another mystery. It appears only twice in Scripture, here and in Habakkuk 3. What does it mean? The term likely derives from the Hebrew shaga, meaning to wander or to reel, suggesting a passionate, perhaps even erratic poetic form, reflecting the tumultuous emotions of someone whose reputation is under attack. It's a musical direction for a poem meant to capture the disorienting experience of injustice. So what does one do when faced with slander that threatens to destroy everything? Where does one turn when human justice systems fail? David's answer, preserved for us through millennia, offers a timeless response that remains as relevant today as when it was first penned. Jerusalem, approximately 1000 BCE. The early morning sun bathes the city's limestone walls in golden light as a solitary figure slips away from the royal compound. King David, composer of psalms and leader of Israel, seeks solitude. His shoulders, once proud and strong from years of warfare, now slump under the weight of accusations. False rumors spread by Cush the Benjamite have worked their way through the tribal elders, questioning his loyalty to Israel, his worthiness as king. The accusations cut deep. Hadn't he served faithfully? Hadn't he spared Saul's life twice, even though Saul had pursued him relentlessly? And now this accusations of treachery, of betraying his people and his covenant with God. As he finds a secluded spot overlooking the Kidron Valley, David reaches for his lyre. His calloused fingers begin to move across the strings, and from deep within his spirit emerges a cry that transcends his historical moment, a universal human plea for vindication. O Lord my God, in you I take refuge, save me from all my pursuers and deliver me, lest like a lion they tear my soul apart, rending it in pieces, with none to deliver. This opening verse immediately establishes the urgency and danger David feels. Rather than seeking vengeance himself or plotting political countermoves, he turns first to divine protection. The lion imagery wasn't simply poetic, lions still roamed the Judean wilderness in David's time, and shepherds like David would have been intimately familiar with the terror of their predatory power. The final phrase, with none to deliver, reveals the isolation that false accusations create. David feels utterly alone in his defense. O Lord my God, if I have done this, if there is wrong in my hands, if I have repaid my friend with evil or plundered my enemy without cause, let the enemy pursue my soul and overtake it, and let him trample my life to the ground and lay my glory in the dust. Notice David's willingness to undergo self-examination. Before demanding justice against his accusers, he pauses to consider, could there be truth in these charges? This demonstrates remarkable humility from someone in a position of power. The phrase "if I have repaid my friend with evil" likely refers to accusations that David had betrayed King Saul, his former mentor. Historical records from 1 Samuel chapters 24 and 26 document that David had opportunities to kill Saul but chose mercy instead, twice sparing the life of the very man hunting him. The expression "let him trample my life to the ground and lay my glory in the dust" uses burial imagery. In ancient Near Eastern culture, proper burial was considered essential for dignity in death. David is essentially saying, if I am guilty as charged, may I not even receive the honor of proper burial? It's a powerful self-imprecation that demonstrates his confidence in his innocence. Arise, O Lord, in your anger, lift yourself up against the fury of my enemies, awake for me, you have appointed a judgment. Let the assembly of the peoples be gathered about you, over it return on high. Here David invokes cosmic courtroom imagery. The assembly of peoples refers to the divine council, a concept familiar in ancient Near Eastern thought where divine beings witnessed God's judgments. By appealing to this heavenly court, David seeks justice beyond human political machinations. The call for God to arise echoes the language used when the Ark of the Covenant, symbol of God's presence, was carried into battle during Israel's wilderness wanderings, Numbers 10:35. David is essentially calling for divine intervention in what he perceives as a spiritual battle. The Lord judges the peoples, judge me, O Lord, according to my righteousness and according to the integrity that is in me. Oh, let the evil of the wicked come to an end, and may you establish the righteous, you who test the minds and hearts, O righteous God. This verse reveals something profound about David's understanding of God, that the divine sees beyond external actions to internal motivations. The phrase "you who test the minds and hearts" uses Hebrew terminology referring to the innermost parts of a person. In a world where public opinion could be manipulated by powerful figures like Cush, David finds comfort in a God who discerns truth beyond appearances and political spin. It's worth noting that David does not claim perfect innocence in all matters. Biblical accounts frankly record his failures, particularly regarding Bathsheba and Uriah. Rather, his claim to righteousness refers specifically to the false charges brought by Cush. In Hebrew thought, righteousness, tzedakah, often carried the sense of being in the right in a particular legal case, not moral perfection in all areas of life. My shield is with God, who saves the upright in heart. God is a righteous judge, and a God who feels indignation every day. The shield imagery draws from David's military experience. Ancient Israelite shields were typically made of wood covered with leather, sometimes reinforced with metal. They were not merely defensive but often decorated with symbols representing a warrior's identity and allegiance. By calling God his shield, David isn't just seeking protection, he's declaring his primary allegiance. The statement that God feels indignation every day provides comfort that divine justice remains active and vigilant, not distant or detached. The Hebrew term for indignation, zam, carries connotations of righteous fury directed at injustice, suggesting that God is not a passive observer of human suffering but remains emotionally invested in human affairs. If a man does not repent, God will whet his sword, he has bent and readied his bow, he has prepared for him his deadly weapons, making his arrows fiery shafts. This vivid military imagery would have resonated powerfully in the ancient world. The process of whetting or sharpening a sword was methodical and deliberate, while preparing a bow required careful stringing and testing. The fiery shafts likely referred to arrows wrapped with pitch-soaked material that would be ignited before firing, devastating weapons that could set entire fortifications ablaze. Archaeological excavations at sites like Lachish have uncovered thousands of arrowheads from this period, testifying to their prominence in warfare. These martial metaphors convey crucial theological points. God's justice is not hasty but deliberate, like sword sharpening. Justice may seem delayed but remains strong and ready, and divine judgment, when it comes, has transformative power, like fire. Behold, the wicked man conceives evil and is pregnant with mischief and gives birth to lies. He makes a pit, digging it out, and falls into the hole that he has made. His mischief returns upon his own head, and on his own skull his violence descends. This passage employs two powerful metaphors, childbirth and trap digging. The childbirth imagery presents wickedness as a developmental process, conceived, carried, and eventually delivered. This suggests that harmful actions often begin with thoughts harbored over time. The Hebrew word for mischief, amal, specifically denotes trouble created through human effort and planning, emphasizing the deliberate nature of his enemy's attacks. The trap-digging metaphor draws from hunting practices familiar in ancient Israel. Wild game would be captured by digging concealed pits along known animal paths. David suggests that divine justice often works not through direct intervention but through allowing natural consequences to unfold. The very destructive systems people create ultimately entrap them. This concept of self-inflicted judgment appears consistently through Scripture, from the Tower of Babel narrative to the prophetic warnings of Jeremiah. I will give to the Lord the thanks due to his righteousness, and I will sing praise to the name of the Lord, the Most High. The psalm concludes with praise rather than vindication. This might seem surprising. We have no resolution to the conflict with Cush, no clear indication that the false accusations have been dismissed. Yet David finds sufficient reason for gratitude in God's character alone. The title Most High, Elyon, carries particular significance, emerging from the Canaanite pantheon where El Elyon was recognized as supreme deity. By using this title, David emphasizes God's sovereignty over all human powers and principalities, including those currently threatening him. This psalm's enduring relevance becomes evident when we consider our contemporary landscape. In an age of social media where reputations can be destroyed in moments through viral misinformation, or cancel culture can render someone socially dead without due process, Psalm 7 speaks with renewed urgency. False accusations today spread not by town gossip but at digital speed, often without accountability or recourse. Consider what this psalm teaches us about responding to injustice. First, it validates righteous anger while channeling it productively. David doesn't suppress his emotions or pretend harmony exists where it doesn't. Yet he takes his anger to God rather than seeking vigilante justice. Second, he models honest self-examination before defending himself. Third, he appeals to a higher court beyond human opinion. And finally, he finds reason for gratitude even amidst unresolved conflict. Throughout history, this psalm has provided language for the falsely accused. During the European witch trials of the 16th and 17th centuries, when mere accusation often equaled guilt, the words of Psalm 7 appeared in journals and letters of the accused. In the American South during the Jim Crow era, when allegations against Black Americans were accepted without evidence, these verses were sung in churches as coded prayers for justice. During the Soviet purges under Stalin in the 1930s, when millions faced accusations of counter-revolutionary activities, believers reportedly whispered these verses in labor camps. The power of this psalm lies in its willingness to confront injustice directly while maintaining faith in ultimate accountability. David doesn't minimize the threat he faces or engage in toxic positivity. He acknowledges real danger while placing it in cosmic perspective. The historical context of this psalm reveals additional layers of meaning. During David's reign around 1000 BCE, Israel was transitioning from a tribal confederation to a centralized monarchy. This political evolution created inevitable tensions, particularly among those like Cush who may have had connections to the previous regime under Saul. Archaeological evidence from this period reveals increasing urbanization and social stratification, creating conditions where political slander could gain particular traction among those resistant to new power structures. Looking at the structure of the psalm itself, biblical scholars note its chiastic arrangement, a literary pattern where the first and last sections correspond, moving inward to a central point. The psalm begins and ends with references to God's righteousness, with the central focus on divine judgment. This structure emphasizes that justice forms both the foundation and culmination of faith. The Hebrew term for vindicate, shaphat, that appears in verse 8 carries legal connotations beyond simple revenge. It envisions restoration of social standing and community relationship. In a collectivist culture like ancient Israel, where identity was inextricably tied to community belonging, false accusations threaten not just reputation but one's place in the covenant community. David's plea for vindication isn't merely about personal pride but about restoring proper relationship with both God and community. Perhaps most strikingly for contemporary readers, Psalm 7 offers no quick resolution. Unlike modern films or novels that rush toward neat conclusions, this ancient text sits comfortably with unresolved tension. We never learn what happened with Cush or whether David's reputation was immediately restored. The psalm models patient trust rather than immediate gratification. Let's consider practical applications. When facing unjust criticism or false accusations today, this psalm teaches us to: first, take refuge in divine protection rather than immediate retaliation. Notice how David begins not with defense strategies but with "In you I take refuge." Second, engage in honest self-evaluation. Before dismissing all criticism, David models the courage to ask, "Is there truth here I need to face?" Third, trust in the existence of objective truth beyond subjective opinion. In a post-truth era where personal narratives sometimes override factual reality, David's confidence that God tests the minds and hearts affirms that objective truth exists even when hidden from public view. Fourth, understand that justice often unfolds through natural consequences rather than supernatural intervention. The metaphor of falling into one's own pit suggests that destructive systems eventually collapse under their own weight. Fifth, find grounds for gratitude even amidst ongoing difficulty. David concludes with praise before his situation resolves. As we reflect on this ancient text, composed approximately 3 millennia ago, we find it remarkably suited for our contemporary moment. In a digital age where accusations spread without verification, where trial by public opinion often precedes due process, where complex situations get reduced to simplistic narratives, Psalm 7 offers an alternative path. It validates the pain of false accusation without surrendering to despair. It acknowledges the chaos of injustice while maintaining confidence in ultimate order. The Psalm's emotional journey, from desperate plea to confident praise, mirrors the psychological process many experience when facing unjust situations. Initial panic gives way to perspective, perspective to patience, and patience eventually to peace. This doesn't happen instantly, and the psalm doesn't suggest such transformation is easy. Rather, it documents the spiritual practice that makes such transformation possible. In many ways, Psalm 7 anticipated what psychologists now recognize as key elements in trauma recovery, naming the threat, conducting realistic self-assessment, appealing to community support, placing personal suffering in larger context, and finding meaning beyond immediate circumstances. This ancient wisdom literature encoded resilience practices that contemporary therapeutic approaches have only recently formalized. As we conclude our examination of this remarkable text, I invite you to consider your own experiences of false accusation or misrepresentation. How might the practices modeled in this psalm offer a pathway forward? When social media amplifies accusations without evidence, when workplace rumors threaten professional standing, when family conflicts involve character assassination, this ancient prayer offers timeless wisdom. I will give thanks to the Lord according to his righteousness. These final words remind us that gratitude remains possible even when injustice persists. Not gratitude for suffering itself, but gratitude for the existence of a moral universe where truth and justice remain real categories, even when temporarily obscured. The most powerful response to injustice isn't always immediate vindication but sustainable resilience, the capacity to maintain integrity while awaiting restoration. Psalm 7 offers language for that difficult middle space between wounding and healing, between accusation and vindication. It reminds us that even in our most isolated moments, when we feel with none to deliver, we stand in a long human tradition of those who have faced similar trials and found strength beyond themselves. As ancient words meet contemporary challenges, may we learn to sing David's song in our own time and place, not with naive optimism that ignores real pain, nor with bitter cynicism that abandons hope, but with clear-eyed faith that justice, though delayed, remains an essential feature of our universe. When false words threaten to define you, remember that you are more than what others say. When human systems fail to provide justice, remember there exists a court of appeal beyond human opinion. And when resolution seems impossible, remember that the same God who heard David's cry 3 millennia ago remains attentive to human suffering today. The journey from desperation to gratitude may not follow a linear path, but this psalm assures us that the journey itself is worth taking, one honest prayer at a time. Before you go, I want to personally invite you to be part of our growing community here at Prayer Universe. If this video touched your heart or brought you peace, take a moment to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a prayer or message that can uplift your spirit. But most importantly, I'd love to hear from you. In the comments below, share just one word or phrase of motivation that this video inspired in you, whether it's hope, gratitude, peace, or something else. Your words matter deeply to us because they help guide the content we create for this channel. Together, let's build a space filled with faith, encouragement, and connection. Thank you for being here, and remember, every prayer counts. See you in the next one.